Yeah, I guess you look back at that situation. Were there signs earlier that there was a real problem in your relationship? Looking back.
Oh no, dude, this was like a month, maybe a month and a half into it. I mean, I started off in the summertime at DSC with her, and then we went to Fraser Ice Arena, and it was fairly like in the beginning of the relationship. So yeah.
Why then? It seems like you went to this extent where you took martial arts. It really seemed like this situation
Mm.
left a lasting impact on you. Why didn't you then think maybe this isn't the best coach for me? Did you ever have any of those
Right.
reservations?
You know, you bring that up, and you're like, come on, dummy. And you've been talking about like how
I
to
don't
find a
think
good.
you're dumb at all.
No, 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 no. But I mean, that's what I would be thinking
Yeah,
to myself too. You know, like, well, what the heck, man? Why aren't you figuring out how to like this isn't a good thing?
right.
But you know, my dad was very busy with work and paying for things. My mom, she used to run the pro shop at the rink, and then when I left the Lowry's and could drive myself, then she kind of went off and did her own thing. So I was left to my own devices. And it's like we had looked around at all the coaches after the Lowry's left, and that was the best one that we decided on.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like I didn't I didn't think there was any other option. I figured there's just got to be a way to deal with it. I would maybe talk to my dad and bring it up a little bit. And he's like, listen, I don't want to hear it. Can't you just figure out a way to do, whatever and get through it? And I'm like, oh, well, okay. And it was just that was kind of it.
Mm. And when you talk about earlier, you talked about Ryan Yonke, and
Mhm.
something you mentioned was that I guess Diana would have you guys do your program one at a time, and then everyone else would stand there and watch. Is that correct? Is that what you were
Um,
saying?
yeah, at the end of in the summertime, we had bought an extra hour of ice, so then that way we could all, after the end of day of training, we could have like a competition practice ice where each skater would go out and run a long program, and then you could feel what it would be like having the ice to yourself, people watching you and stuff like that. So,
Oh, that's really
that was a good, training aspect of it. So,
That's really smart. I think a lot of skater coaches do that with exhibition type things. But when Diana was training Ryan, did she ever kind of pit you guys against each other, create that competition? Because something I remember from when I started skating was Evie did that with all of his students. And personally, I loved it. I thought it was a great thing. I'm really competitive, but you've talked about that you aren't that competitive as a person. So did she ever do that? And do you think that if coaches are to do that, that it's healthy for skaters, or do you think that's probably a negative coaching tactic?
I think the tactic is a good tactic, but it could be implemented either positively or negatively. Um, for me, Ryan was always a little bit. I was older, and I had my jumps sooner than him because he was much younger. So it was kind of like it ended up being competitive a little bit just because like I wanted to. I could always, no matter what we were doing, I would always land it just to be like, there you go, Ryan. Just to kind of like a
Friendly
incentive for him.
competition. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good, but it was never that aspect. The only competitive demeanor that was discussed about that is when I was talking to a couple of ex skaters that didn't want anything to do with me when I had left Diana, but then as they got out of skating, and then magically I would be friended, and then we'd discuss things, and they'd apologize and feel bad. I'm like, no, I get it. I mean, I was there.
Mhm.
Um, that I guess that there was a big stable of girls, and Ryan and I had lessons all the time. Like I remember I didn't want as many lessons. I'd have one at least 2 a day on every session. Like one or 3 sessions, two lessons a day possibly. And the girls would always like, I guess they were lacking in lessons, in their feelings, and they were always very jealous of us, or at least this one little girl was telling me this situation that she felt, and that's what she thought all the other girls did, because she remembers Diana coming into the locker room saying, here's the deal, I really don't have enough time for all of you. So if you guys go out there and skate well and catch my eye, maybe I'll give you a lesson.
Mm.
So they were always pitted against each other, and I don't know if that was doesn't sound very positive to me,
No.
especially if they had negative feelings toward me, or at least this little girl did um, at that time. But it's different. And speaking of pitting each other together, Petrenko, when I remember with him in Champions on Ice, he said that that's how they did it back in the day in Russia, and it was just this group lesson. Everyone was doing their thing, and if a little kid did something, you didn't want to like have them show you up. So it was a very um, camaraderie. It wasn't just like hey, this kid can do a double axel, why can't you? So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if it would work here in the States. And he said, no, actually, me and my, um, it's his coach, or his mother-in-law, they ran that together. And he's like, it ran for about a month, and then all of a sudden it just tanked because whoever's the least talented of the group, the parent would want to pull them out and throw more cash at them and say, give them more private lessons, because that's what we're trained here in the States of, you'll be better the more money you spend and the more private lessons you get. So one by one, the lowest guy would keep falling off until finally it was just private lessons only, even though it was saving them a lot more money for more time with their coach. So it was interesting in our society and how different it is from over there.
Now, looking back in 1994, you had a meeting with your dad, a sports psychologist, and Diana. And it was a really pivotal moment in your career.
Yep.
I guess when you get to that point where you have to have this huge meeting where there's, a parent, a sports psychologist, a coach sitting down, why not make that change at that point? You're already going to pretty drastic, game-changing measures.
Right.
Did you even discuss, maybe I'll go take from Richard Callahan, maybe I'll look who else is around and see to get yourself on track? Or did you have enough belief in maybe the technique you were getting that you needed to stay? Or what was your mindset going in there?
Well, it's interesting because my dad, he's the one that ran the meeting. And it was are you going to do this or this? You get one or two options. That's it. And so I then said, fine, I'll pick skating. And then he dictated that she would just teach me, period. And then said, the therapist, I'd see her twice a week, which is a lot, but that's what I needed. And you'll mess with his mind. And then look back at Diana and says, and you don't even talk about anything personal or anything, which really ticked her off. I mean, you could tell. But my dad, he's just like a businessman. This is what it'll be. And Dan, you're not going to go to school. You're not going to teach. You're not going to do anything. Your life is just skating to get this done. And up till that point, I was always told, and other skaters too have told me the same thing, that if you can't make it with me, you will not make it with anyone. So that was it was said to me many times. I mean, flat out, that's just what it is. If you can't make it with me, you're not going to make it with anyone. So it's almost as if it's not that she isn't, to me, it's not that you're not a good coach and you're not a good skater. It's maybe the team doesn't work. I mean, that's what I've learned now in my life. So to then make it sound as if it's not going to work, it's you're the bad cog in the wheel, I don't accept that. Like, that's upsetting to me now that I think about it. So that thought process of, okay, we're going to either you skate and let's find another team member, that just never was a thought on my end. And my dad wouldn't have known, like, well, is this someone we can replace? I mean, is this part of an issue? And the therapist for the next year of all those meetings, which I didn't understand until way later when I went to take from Mitch, then went back and worked with her a bit, that all I did for 2 years, for 2 days a week, was to figure out how to take the technique in, listen to it, and all that other stuff that came in, just put it out the other ear. And it was learning how to ignore getting inside to manipulate, because I feel that it was always a break them down so they have nothing and you're just this complete open person, and then they can rebuild you as this automaton, like we maybe had talked about before. So I was built up very strong, so I could just do my job. Nothing would affect me. I mean, a snide comment or you're not going to do it if you don't listen to what I say, it just never affected me. I didn't even hear it. So, you say, why didn't you leave? I mean, it wasn't at that time. It didn't hit me yet. I guess I wasn't ready to, or no one was around to understand that this isn't healthy for you. You need to leave.
I think when you deal with a therapist, you're obviously hiring someone who is an outsider in a perspective, and anyone who's been to therapy, I think, can attest that they'll often realize something before you do, and they'll, at least if they're good, and they'll get you by asking probing questions to really start to see what's happening. So what did your psychologist really think about your relationship with Diana, her coaching techniques, and what she was saying to you?
She asked, she told me, of course, this is much later, that she felt out you know, I think she did. I remember asking me, well, what happens if you took from another coach or whatever? And because that's what we were trained, I was like, oh, I wouldn't be able to make it. I mean, there's really no other facility that I could go to, and so I've been snowed into thinking that if I'll never do it unless it's just with this person. And she was smart enough to realize, you know what, like, I can't win that battle. Like, I know it's not a good thing, so the only thing I can now do is work with what I have, and we're going to start talking about like compartmentalizing, focus, listening and taking very selective hearing, so that I know, like, there'd be keywords whenever they would pop up. Like, I was taught to like just shut down and then just focus on this one thing and then go do it. So she gave me the armor, so to speak, to live through the pathway I chose to get to my goal.
Now, you talk about getting the armor. Do you think that a sports psychologist can ever make you that person who can skate really well? Because I know that you've quoted Scott Hamilton in saying that in order to do well in competition and win, you either need to be an idiot or an asshole. And do you think that it is even that...
you either have to not care or be a complete like a-hole, or at least that's what Mitch had told me at the time, was that's what he
Do you think
said.
that that's really true? And is it even that? Is there something in between? I mean, how much does your killer instinct play in? And if you have that competitive killer instinct under pressure, and can you get that from dealing with a therapist? Because I know that if I want to compete with Jenny Kirk in broadcast journalism, that shit is going to come out when she is really intense, and she is going to cut me. And I have that too about certain things, that I know this about myself. You said that you didn't have it about skating, but had it about comedy. So can your therapist really give you that? Can they turn you into Evan Lysacek and get you out there?
It's interesting that you say that. Okay, because now she gave me that armor where it's like I was programmed with like whatever words that were going to come to your mind, like I would put them in my head. So as soon as I fell on my triple flip, my nemesis jump, like that was my worst jump ever, but my most consistent. I did one a day, and it was in the long program. That was it, and I always landed it. And I would fall the very first time, and she said to me, as soon as you fall, get up and say, I'll do the next one. And I didn't believe it, but just say it. And I just kept repeating it every day until finally it just happened. So I was programmed to be that automaton, because it's possible. Because it's kind of, it's odd when you think about it. It's like being in a cult too, or being programmed, brainwashed. That year at Nationals in '96, Mike Weiss, who is a great guy, he's skating before me. I'm watching the TV monitor, and he did a great jump, and I'm like, I could do that better. And then he'd fall on one, and I was just like, oh, well, for you, buddy, I'm going to land mine.
I love it.
And it's like, it wasn't me. It was so surreal looking back at that, because I wanted this goal, so I allowed someone to program me to become that. But then when you're saying about like, can you become this person? So I guess what I said is I didn't care about, like, I stopped caring about feeling like a good guy and making sure that I was a nice guy. I wasn't a jerk, but I just stopped caring, which allowed me to be molded, I think, to get that goal. But being on Champions, I have to tell you this, dude. There is a huge difference between everyone who's the gold medal and second and below. And it's bar none every single, no matter who it is. If you're the champion, if you made a champion, there's a definite difference in the mindset. And what it is that you're maybe backstage, or you're hanging out and you're playing ping pong is the best thing. That was like the big thing for everyone to play, right? If I'm playing ping pong and Elvis has that mindset, he is a champion, because he will win it no matter what the cost. It doesn't matter. He's got that killer instinct. So if we're playing and I'm losing, I don't care. I'm having a good time. As soon as I start winning, he's like the biggest jerk ever. And it's just like, I'm not having a good time, because he's so angry because he wants to win. He's just programmed to have that killer instinct that I don't care what it is. It's not that he doesn't want to be your friend or anything like that, because we are great friends, but it's just, there's that difference, man. And it's like, You see the ones that are kind of the nice guys, and then you can see the ones that they're nice, but they've got that edge to them. And at any moment in time, look out, dude. And it's funny. You're right. So I think Scott's comment, if that is what he really said, because I heard it from Mitch, I agree with it 100%.
So you talk about champions on ice. So let's bring it.
Okay.
You talk about skaters having that edge. And I think you toured with one of the biggest stars in skating ever. And the thing about Michelle Kwan is that she has this image of that perhaps she and her agent even really projected, where she thought about clouds when she skated in Nagano, and everything was about the wind and soaring over the ice. But to be that competitive, you have to have that killer instinct. So what did you really notice about Michelle, that because she doesn't seem like someone who is an a-hole in everyday life, is it something where it's very specific to in that moment on the ice when it comes time to perform that they turn into that? Because she seems like a very lovely person, but there just has to be that competitive killer instinct that comes out. So what's your really perspective on her success?
Well, you're right. Like, I don't know if it's the I don't care attitude or whatever, because, I never, there's different cliques that you hang out with, whether you're in high school or champions. And it's like, I never hung out a lot with her. So we know each other to say hi and can chat a little bit, but I never got close with her. So, you're right. The only thing I know of her is she was always very sweet. She was nice. She wasn't one of those people that would ignore you, like a lot did. But when you were on the ice, like, you would warm up for your session and you'd watch like the girls skate. Like the guys, when we skated, it was a blast. Like, you did your thing, you had fun, whatever. When the girls skated, oh my God, it was like a competitive scene all the time. Like, you guys are evil. Like, you're out there skating, and if one person would start doing triple lutz, double toe, the other one would start doing triple lutz, triple toe. If one started doing this, then the other one had to do that. And it's like, Michelle, they would throw down all the time. And I think Michelle was very lucky to have champions, because she would run these programs like back in the day. I mean, you'd have 100 cities to do it, and she would have all this numerous opportunities to skate in spotlights, under a crowd, in pressure, and she would be consistent and clean almost all the time. So by far, it's like, we're used to training on ice and getting through your program, and then all of a sudden you go to nationals, and it's like, no one's on the ice. There's a huge amount of people in the audience. The lights are definitely brighter because they're not saving money like they are at regular rinks where it's darker. And it's not your environment you're used to. Yet that's her main thing. She skated in that environment. So I think that helped tremendously with that. But you're right. She just had that killer instinct when she was on the ice, is what I noticed. And her personality-wise, off of the ice, I couldn't tell you.
I think what I've noticed from Michelle, I'll jump in here, I think sometimes they're separate, where, I mean, I don't think what you're trying to say is that someone like Elvis is an a-hole all the time, but it seems like it is situational, where when Michelle gets on the ice, because I've skated with her on those sessions where she's doing triplets, triple toe, and then Sasha goes do triplets, and they're the dueling triplets, she just turns into this other person. It's like she turns it on, but then off the ice, she's completely lovely, fun to be around in the locker room. So I think maybe what you're saying is that it's situational, where when it becomes that competitive atmosphere, those...
Yeah. All right. Well, you're right. So I guess then what I noticed then is that the top placers, they're always, if there's a competition, they're always competitive. Where the second and below, it's like they don't necessarily have to be competitive and everything. They can at least enjoy the sport for the sport. So I guess that's just my own observations. Whether it's not right or wrong, I don't know, but it's just what I noticed.
That's really interesting. One of the things you have talked about publicly before was the rough time that you had at the 1997 World Championships in the qualifying round. And you said you didn't skate very well in that performance. And when you got off the ice, you said your coach, Diana, at the time, her first words to you were, "Oh my God, how could you do this to me? What do you think the judges are going to think of me now?" So it was really all about her. And it's appalling to hear that a coach would say that, but playing the devil's advocate, coaches put a lot into a skater, where it may become like a reflection of them. This is their work, to try to get a skater to produce results and to do really well. So how much do you think it is about the coach? They're human, their ego's going to get in the way, and obviously that was really the inappropriate time to do that, but what advice, now that you are a coach, what advice you have for coaches to keep that separate?
I guess no matter what a skater does at the time, you as the coach can only provide them with the tools to be as successful as they can be to achieve that goal. Whether they achieve it or not, partially is on your end, and the other partial is on the skater's end, how well they're prepared and if they're able to implement it at the time. I understand that, if a skater that I'm throwing out for testing doesn't skate well, I mean, I'll feel bad, but more to the point, I'm the coach. I'm putting myself in that position right now. That's my job. That's my responsibility to, you know what, I got to take it. Whether she passes or not, if I did the best that I can hold my head up proud. Even if they tank, they hit the boards, whatever, and I know that I've trained them as hard as I can, it's what it is. People are going to think what they want regardless. So for me then to say something is horrific, as Diana said to me, is just unacceptable. It doesn't matter. Like I can't stress it enough. And if you have that attitude that you can kind of say, well, it's this person, they're making me look bad or whatever, then you shouldn't be a coach. You shouldn't be a teacher. If a skater goes out there and he flips off the judges and, he kicks the ice and blah, blah, blah randomly, you as a coach, like if that's unacceptable and you hit that boundary, the skater can come off and you say, you know what, that was unacceptable. And then you can go to the judges and say, I don't condone that, and I've just left this, kid. That's cool. You can do that. I mean, though that's an acceptable thing to not demean the kid, not be whatever, but showing your boundaries of who you are as a person. So I know I'm kind of going beyond what you're asking a little bit in that aspect, but yeah, I think that that if it's that far involved that you think that, hey, this is you're a reflection of me, and if you don't skate well, I look like crap. I'm not going to get a lot of students now because of you. Like, get out of the sport. Go do something else where you're not even dealing with children, because it's like it really messes up people a lot. I mean, I don't think that coaches really understand the power of their words and how they affect so deeply their skaters that years from now, they're a mom or a dad and they're talking to their kid and they say something that's hurtful because that's what they remember their coach is saying. And it's like, yeah, I try to always watch what I say. And there's one time when I first started coaching, I did something very similar that I've seen my coach do. And I looked at her and I said, if this is how you're going to skate, then I'm going to get off the ice because you're wasting my time and your mother's money. And the mom was right there in front, and the mom kind of nodded her head and said, okay, got off the ice, and that was the end of the lesson. And then the next day, I thought about it, and I was like, I don't want to be that way. And I went to the mom, and I apologized in front of the mom and the little girl, and I said, that was wrong, and I will never do that again. And, they were like, oh, okay. To them, it was fine. It wasn't a big deal, but it was to me because it could have been. It might have affected them. Hopefully it doesn't anymore, so...
I think it shows your maturity, and I think that's what coaches need to have. They have to be able to extricate themselves from the situation for a second and see how is what I'm saying going to affect this person. Because I'm delving into my own personal stuff here, but
sure.
I had a situation at the World Championships in 2004 where right before the press conference after the short program, Richard Callahan, in front of everyone, pulled me aside, and his wife Mandy was there, my sister was there, and he just let me have it. And I had fallen on my triplets, and he said, you fell on purpose. Right before the event, I had received a call from my agent that Tommy wanted me on the tour, and he said, they're never going to want you on the tour. If you fall like this, you did this on purpose. And I understand that he kind of blamed me for it, but I understand, like, if you fall, you're not supposed to do that. But it put this seed in my mind, which it sounds like something Diana has done to you, where you think, do I mess up on purpose? Did I want to do horribly? And you get so confused. And what you're saying is so poignant because it really does stick with you, where you think you're just this horrible person. Because I think in a way, as a skater, you look up to your coaches, you idolize them, and you never want to let them down. So I completely agree with what you say. But my final question about Diana is, Dave and I have been talking a lot about why didn't you leave her earlier? So looking back, and for anybody who may be in a situation similar to what you were in with Diana for many years, feeling like they want to move on, what advice do you have for the best way to make that transition, to make that change when it does come time to move on from a coach?
Well, I mean, once you've decided that's it and you're done, I guess you ask for your final bill and you pay them the cash that's owed, and then you move on. And like, if they want to have a discussion or a meeting or whatever, I guess you have to do whatever you need to do for your closure. For me, I had been dealing with so much stuff. Like, I just was so beat down and so tired. Like, I didn't want to have a scene, which I knew I would have. So I put a letter together saying, thanks for everything. Just things aren't really working, send me your final bill. And I included a whack of cash from Champions because it was the percentage that I had agreed to, which, on a side note, I don't agree with percentages unless you're made a deal with their coach that they're taking off some of their coaching fees for that. Because it's like when you go to college and you pay all your money to become a doctor, and if you pay it all the way through, you don't pay a percentage of your salary back to the school. So I don't think you should for a coach. Just a side note there. But I sent it off, and sure enough, I got a phone call later and still had that screaming, yelled at scene on the phone of, how could you do this to me? I hate what you're doing for me professionally. And it's like, I guess there's really no good way to do it, especially if there's that boundary has been crossed and there's that closeness. So I guess it's just like anything, be as professional as possible, write your check, say thank you very much, and then start looking for other coaches like how I had discussed before,
I think you talk about that final, asking for the final bill, but the World Championships weren't actually your final moment with Diana. I know that Jenny switched coaches pretty soon after the 2004 World Championships. I think it was at a Pro-Am where she switched right after. But you actually were working with Diana that summer. So to think that you went back after she said that to you at the World Championships.
Kind of messed up, huh?
Yeah, but what wound up happening? If that wasn't the final straw for you, what was? What was the final straw?
I guess that the reason why that championship was so hard is because I didn't see the therapist for about a year because I thought my armor was good, and I had a groin pull, and slowly my armor went away, and then the seeds kept coming in more, and then I had a harder time dealing with having these discussions because she'd want to talk about other things like, well, why aren't you feeling good, or why aren't you doing this? And it just became very difficult. And we had a small meeting where it's like, if things keep going the way they are now, you will never make it. And those are the exact, I remember it like yesterday. These are the exact words that were said to me. And I said F off to that comment. I can't believe that you would actually say that to me. And the response back was, you're not saying anything to me. And I said, so in other words, you're saying the most horrible thing possible just to get some sort of response, so I'll open up. So that was the tactic that was being used, which is unfortunate. It's awful. So when I was, so I'm out of this armor chink now, and I'm kind of going through my crap. And I do worlds where I skate horribly, and I lose an Olympic spot for the Olympic team, and I get told that, how could you do this to me, right? So anyway, I'm at Skate Detroit, and the senior ladies had finished, and so she's got like 4 of them out on the ice, and it was at 11 o'clock at night, and no one's, not a lot of people in the audience at all because everyone was gone for the night. So they're skating, and I came up and I put my arm around her and Stephanie Pizzo, my ballet coach, and I kind of smiled, and I'm like, how's it going, ladies? And Diana was really tense because the ladies didn't skate very well. And didn't say anything, and I'm like, wow, maybe you should kind of like take a breath, because I'm sure they can sense this. So nothing was said. So a couple more seconds go by, and I said it one more time, like, no, really, I think you need to kind of maybe calm down a bit. And she looked at me, she goes, fine. And she stormed about 10 feet away and turned back and yelled out, if you think you know better, then you teach them. And it was just like, oh my God, like, are you kidding me? And I thinking about like all the stuff that I had to deal with, that was really nothing comparatively wise. But I walked up and I put my arm around her because it's like, yeah, there's only a couple people, but there's still enough. I mean, it's in public. That's my biggest pet peeve, is having things like that done in public. And I said to her, first of all, I can't believe you're doing this in public. And second of all, and I guess I had enough, and it was kind of bad of me, but I twisted the knife a little bit because she would always say this to me. And I said, maybe you need to talk about this with your therapist. And I walked away. And I went to my dad's office, the next morning, and I said, here's the deal. Either I find a new coach or I quit skating right now. And he was just like, dude, it's right before the Olympics. Are you sure? This is what you want to do? I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm done skating. Like I did not. The thing that I love the most in the entire world is skating on the ice, performing. And I was willing to say, I will never do that again if that means I have to still take from Diana. And that was the end of that. And I took from Mitch. So that was the final straw. And it's surreal thinking about, like, that was the final straw. It wasn't all these other horrible things that were said to you or done. And yeah, I guess I just finally had enough.